I discovered a strand of thread escaping from my elbow, and I started to pull it out, but now I regret it. I first noticed it about a month ago. Well, technically my girlfriend pointed it out to me. I just finished third period, and I waited out in the hallway for my girlfriend in front of her locker, an encounter that has become ritual. As I stood still observing the sea of my fellow classmates pass by, I felt the most annoying itch. I've always had a bit of problem with dry skin, but this was ridiculous. I almost felt like ripping my own skin off. The sensation was coming from my elbow. I scratched and clawed at the spot. Eventually, I started to aggressively rub my elbow on my girlfriend Maria's locker to try to soothe my irritation. "What the hell are you doing?" Maria asked me while garnishing a perplexed expression. I blushed for a moment out of embarrassment, not really wanting her to know of my epidermic issue. "Nothing, I just had a small itch and I decided to go grizzly on it," I said while chuckled nervously. She just stared at me with a bit of befuddlement. I cautiously leered at her facial expression for any looks of disgust. She's always been out of my league, so I genuinely did my best to impress each day. "You're such a nerd," she told me while shoving me out of the way of her locker. That's when she noticed it, the strand protruding from my arm. "You dude, stop scratching. Your skin is peeling off," she told me, as my eyes slowly veered down to see what Maria was talking about. A sensation of dread embodied me. There it was, sticking about an inch out of my elbow. It wasn't a piece of my skin, but more like a strand of hair. It was black but thick. It almost glistened somehow, and my eyes were absolutely fixated on it as if my mind had drifted into some otherworldly slumber. "Hello, are you going to carry my books, or what?" my girlfriend asked me, snapping me out of my feverish daydream. I shook my head, trying to brush off the unsettling feeling. Seeing Maria just staring at me with trepidation, I smiled and pretended that the knots forming in my stomach were not there. As the rest of the day continued on, I tried my best not to rub or scratch my elbow, even though the irritation was driving me insane. I put on my denim jacket, hoping no one else would see the unusual strand escaping from my arm. But as I sat in class, I started to notice the other students. It almost seemed as if they too had strands protruding from different parts of their bodies. I rubbed my eyes, understanding that all these is some hallucination of sorts. It had to be the mystery lunch meat I ate from the cafeteria. I mumbled to myself underneath breath, the student in front of me shushing me. As she was turned to face me, I had discovered that there was a strand protruding from her top lip. The shock caused me to jump out of my desk. All my classmates turned to look at me to see what the disturbance was about, and that's when I could vividly see that all of them had the same dreadful strands. Some had it coming out of the sides of their necks, others had it coming out of their faces. I was completely left with bewilderment. What was happening? I stormed out of the classroom, gasping for air, my body practically shutting down. I could hear my teacher yell out to me. I fell to my knees, dry heaving, my heart accelerating, all while my teacher continued shouting at me. But that's when I realized she really wasn't shouting. She wasn't even talking. She was mumbling, as if she was trying to speak with her mouth closed. I turned to look at the teacher. Her mouth, the strands, they had sewn her mouth shut. No, what the hell is going on?" I yelped out loud. The teacher was getting closer, with that horrid disfigured mouth, the mumbling growing louder, practically screaming through her own skin. I was terrified, and all I could think of doing was running. I sprinted down the hallway, my eyes fixated on the exit, just wanting to get home. But that's when Maria came from around the corner, and I crashed into her at full force, dropping her to the ground. "What the hell is your problem?" Maria angrily scolded me. I remained silent, my heart virtually escaping from my chest. I looked at my girlfriend and examined her face. No strands, no disfigured mouth, just her usual beautiful face. Relief invaded my sense as I embraced Maria into my arms and hugged tightly. "Dude, seriously, what is your problem?" she told me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't even know if what I saw was real, but I needed someone else to tell me that I wasn't crazy. Their faces, it was, "Just come with me," I told Maria, grabbing her by the hand, dragging her back to my classroom. All I could hear was my girlfriend moaning out in confusion at what I was talking about. I think I was muttering gibberish as I pulled her by the hand. "Okay, look at them. Tell me you see it," I demanded of my girlfriend as we stood at the doorway to my classroom. As before, all the students turned to look at me, but now they were back to normal. Maria just looked up at me with annoyance and pulled her hand free from my grip. I was utterly confounded. What the heck had happened? I grabbed at my head trying to get a grip on the reality of what I just saw, but I had nothing, no explanation. And with that I went home. Arriving home, I could hear my father watching TV in the living room, presumably sitting on the couch, as usual, him frozen into a potato-like state. Me and him never spoke. We didn't have much in common, though my mother, well, we used to be close, but now she works double shifts just to keep us afloat since my deadbeat of a father never seems to be able to find a job, so she sleeps during the afternoon. Whenever I get home, I haven't seen her in days, and I just wished so badly I could go talk to her about what had happened to me, just wanting her to coddle me in her warmth like she used to when I was a kid. I approached my parents' door to the bedroom, and the passion to knock to see if perhaps my mom was awake had overcome, but my reluctance seeped in right before my knuckle had made contact with the old wooden door. Rather, I just went to my room. I sat down on my bed, still perplexed, and just took a deep breath trying to relax, but that itching, it was still prevalent. Once again I started scratching, trying to soothe the irritation, and that's when I decided to pull that strand out. Maybe it was some weird bug stuck in my skin. I've seen that before in nature channels, where some unexpected sap has a bug lay eggs, and is eye only for it to swell, until it burst open with tiny bugs escaping from the gaping wound. Come on, it can't be that, I told myself, trying to dismiss that idea. While shaking my head, I went to the bathroom to retrieve my tweezers. I sat back down on my bed. I could feel sweat inundating my body as I stared down at that mysterious black strand, and with apprehension I grabbed at it with the tweezers and started to pull. Surprisingly enough, it didn't hurt. It didn't feel like anything. The strand just kept pulling out like some morbid magic trick you would see on a children's TV show. I pulled and tugged, and more strand came out till eventually I heard a tear. I exclaimed out loud. I finally tore my skin open a bit, and I dropped the tweezers, grabbing at my now opened wound. I ran towards the bathroom trying to find a band-aid, anything to stop the bleeding, but then I noticed a strange substance oozing from my gash. It wasn't blood, but instead some thick white goo. My mouth gaped open with utter astonishment. Fear crept into the forefront of my mind. I could feel my skin crawling from absolute disgust, and I didn't know what to do, who to tell, or if I even should tell anyone, so instead I did my best to close up the laceration, and I put a band-aid over it. I went to bed early, just wanting to get some sleep, hoping that this ghastly day would be put behind me. As the days came and went, I didn't have any more strange visions, no more mumbles protruding from mouths that were sewn shut, and to my delight things seemed to be normal again. The only issue that troubled me was my wound. It was getting bigger, and each day I would change the band-aid, replacing with a bigger one, eventually upgrading to a gauge, literally binding it shut. Each day I would stop in front of my parents' bedroom wanting to awake my tired mother, wanting her to fix my arm. But every time my hesitancy didn't allow me, keeping me from knocking, not wanting to wake her. By the time weeks had passed, the tear on my elbow had completely engulfed my left arm. I didn't know what to do anymore, so I now bandaged my arm and placed it in a sling. I hardly could move it anymore anyway. It was pretty much dead. When I arrived at school, Maria finally broke up with me. She told me she was tired of my nonsense, and I was left utterly broken, just standing in the middle of the hallway as my peers crashed into me as they passed by. That's when Kyle, the captain of the football team, aggressively shoved me to the floor, it snapping me out of my heartache. "Get the hell out of my way, punk," the jock told me. I just stared intensely at him as he walked away. That's when I realized I had landed on my injured arm, and to my horror my arm had severed itself from my body. I couldn't believe it. There it was, just lifeless and inept, but worse, I didn't feel any pain. I quickly flung the sling off of my shoulder and saw that nauseating white goo flowing out of my dismembered body part. That's when the revelation finally came to me of what this substance was. It was fluffy and soft. It was cotton. No, what the hell is happening to me? I yelled out. I got up off the floor, grabbing at my gaping wound, looking around for anyone to help me, but there was no one, no sound, nothing. I was left in utter bewilderment. I ran home as fast as I could, still caressing my mutilated arm, tears streaming down my defeated face. I was yelling out for help, wanting anyone to save me, but the streets were desolated. No traffic, no cars, just emptiness. Arriving home, I ran to my mother's door, knocking with all the energy I could muster, pleading for my mom to come and save me. I could hear my father, as usual, watching his television, not even asking if I was okay. I felt faint. I was losing a lot of that white goo, and my vision became blurry. "Mom, please open the door. I need you. Please," I cried out as I fell to one knee. As I knelt there defeated, I could hear my father's television becoming louder, as if he was trying to filter me out. And I could feel my blood boil from anger. Why did he hate me? I thought. The rage growing inside me conquered my anguish, and I stormed towards the living room, ready to confront the man that had emotionally abandoned me. There I stood in front of my father, and fear seeped its way into my very soul. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand, my eyes now widening with trepidation. The man that was sitting on the couch wasn't even a man, it was a rag doll. Strands protruding from the seams. It just sitting there watching TV like how my dad usually did. The thing was horrid. It had a shaggy mop for hair, 2 buttons for eyes, its mouth sewn into a grisly frown. And that's when that thing turned to look at me. "Dad," I whimpered out. I began to vomit on the floor, more of that white substance pouring out of my mouth. "I don't know what's happening," I yelled out. I cautiously walked back to my mother's door. With my stomach turning knots, I nervously opened it. There she was, my mother laying in her bed, but like my father, it was just another rag doll. I haven't left the house in days. The 2 rag dolls that are my parents remain the same. More strands are protruding from my skin. My once dismembered arm has worked its way to half my body. More and more of that cotton-like goo falls out of me. I know I don't have much time left. All I could think about is how I wish I never pulled on that strand.